Hey everyone, it's Tony again with another video. Um, Yesterday, the Supreme Court, as everyone knows, overturned Roe v. Wade, and basically opened this dialogue about abortions, pro-choice versus pro-life, and so I just wanted to get on and talk about it. From an ex Jehovah's Witness perspective and really just to give my thoughts. Obviously, I know that this is a very controversial topic, and so I am very open to other people's perspective or comments. I just ask that people respect my opinions and be respectful in dialogue. I think that the subject of pro life and pro choice pretty much shows how diverse views are. And a lot of times our views are determined by our religion, how we grow up, and, you know, the things our parents teach us. So, to some extent, we all form our own opinions, but a lot of the times our opinions are formed for us. And it takes an open mind to develop your own opinion about these types of matters. I will say, obviously, growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, abortions were absolute no-nos. And at one point in my life, I judged people who would get abortions. It was, the classic, how could you ever do that? It is, you're killing a baby or whatever the case may be. And in my experience, just growing up as a black person in the black community, there, from what I personally saw, and I'm going to disclaim this by saying that this is just what I saw. This is not, I'm not at all saying that this is everyone's experience in the black community, but the few people that I did know who had abortions were basically out, like, sleeping around, and it was okay. Oh, I'm sleeping around with all these men, not using protection, and now I'm pregnant, but I don't want to be pregnant, so I'm gonna have an abortion. And I think that, you know, when you see that happening, you develop a negative view towards abortions, because not only did I, like I said, I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, so I have this religious perspective. But then it's like, okay, because you're seeing abortions from a very negative uh, light. You're not looking at all of the other people who are getting abortions, who are not doing it simply because they were not cautious or, you know, selfish or whatever the case may be. Um, so after, as I stated in my previous video, I, haven't really been a witness since I think it's been 2007 or 2008. So it's been a lot of years now. I did go back briefly, but even then, when I went back, I did not have a problem with abortions by that time, um, because, um, I understood what might cause a person to want to have an abortion. I was long away from, this is just bad just because. And one of the things that I see when I see pro-life advocates is they're very religious people. And if you've ever tried to have a conversation with somebody whose views and perspectives are solely based on something external to themselves, which in most cases, when you're talking to someone Christian, is the Bible, because everything that they view has to come from either the Bible or their preachers or whatever doctrine they have. They close their minds to seeing things from any other perspective other than that. Um, and I disagree with that. One of you know one of the things that I find freeing being out of religion is I I don't feel the need to be overly concerned about the way other people live their lives. I have opinions, obviously, about the way that I choose to live my life, and I am always vocal or upset when I see people live their lives in a way that harms others. However, I am more cautious as a non-religious person now of judging people for making decisions that really only affect them. Um, and there may be some people who want to say that, oh, well, if you kill a child, you are also affecting the child. But the way that I view that is this: as a woman, or even as a man, I can go and I can get a hysterectomy. I can, you know, my husband can get a vasectomy. I can use condoms. I can get IUDs. I can do all of these things to prevent pregnancy by choice. It isn't necessarily natural. You know, tying your tubes isn't the way we are meant to be as humans. Okay, any species is meant to procreate. Okay, so that's how species survives. It doesn't matter whether you're a human, a dog, a cat, whatever. Your species would die off if you could not procreate. So from that perspective, procreation is the natural way of being. Otherwise, humans wouldn't survive through time. So when you alter your natural way of being, you are doing something to your body that is not meant to be done, but that is your choice to make. It is not my decision or responsibility or concern what you do to make choices for yourself. At the end of the day, as a society, the earth is quite populated, and you're always going to have people who want to have children. So the survival of our species is not dependent upon, these few people or even lots of people saying, okay, I don't want to have a child anymore. The species will survive just fine, because for every person who doesn't want a child, there's plenty of people who do. So if you take religion out of that conversation, there's really no conversation at all, because there's no real purpose in forcing someone to have a child outside of your religious views. So again, that choice to have a child should be left up to each person individually. Now, if a person, for whatever reason, gets pregnant, and even if they are pregnant because they were being careless, whatever, again, that's not my place to judge that person. That, I personally don't necessarily teach my children to have sex before they're married. That's not a religious view. That's just a personal value that I have. That's just what I choose to teach my children, because I feel that that is better for them. But I can't force that view upon someone else, because it's not my right to do so. If you're having sex with someone, and you're having consensual sex with another person, you're not harming anyone, unless you have some sort of disease and you're not informing that person. if all things, you know, being equal, with the person understanding you're having safe sex, you're not harming me by your choice to have sex with someone else who is single, not a child, and has the capacity and ability to make that decision for themselves. Therefore, it is not my job to impose my views upon you, my values upon you. And when we make laws around our own personal values, that is a problem, because it is not anyone's responsibility to tell a woman that she has to have a child that she does not want. The reason that poses a problem is because you then are forcing someone to have to be in a role that they may not be prepared for. They may not be prepared mentally. They may not be prepared financially. And, you know, having a child lasts, it's a responsibility that lasts your lifetime. You don't, people say, okay, children are expensive until they're 18. Yes, but that's only if you have a healthy child who has no mental illness, no problems or health complications, and they are able to find a job at 18 and then leave your home. And even then, by the time you've raised that child to 18, it's incredibly expensive. On top of the fact that it takes an emotional toll on you to raise children. So what happens is, when people are shamed into feeling that they cannot make these choices, whether because their religion has taught them that it's wrong, or society is putting pressure on them to make choices that aren't the ones that they would otherwise make, then you have children who are born into homes where they are emotionally and financially neglected. Or even worse, they are abused or even killed. Just look at the many news stories and the many cases of women who have killed their children. Postpartum depression is something that happens, and there's some controversy surrounding whether or not that is the reason why some women kill their children shortly after they're born. But regardless, whether or not it's because of postpartum depression or just because the woman didn't want the child, if that woman would have felt that she had the right to make that decision, whether or not she would have a child on her own prior to birthing that child, then the tragedy of losing the child after it was born, or her now having to live with murdering her child, the child having to deal with, whatever pain and torture may have come from being in an abusive environment or having been killed, all of those things could have been prevented if, abortion were an option for that woman. So that is something that really needs to be considered and thought about for people who are pro-life. The other thing that I notice is that people will go out and picket and say they're pro-life, but how many of these people are lining up at adoption agencies to adopt unwanted children? If you are not making your home and your finances available to pick up the slack of someone else who you would like to deny a choice to have a child, then you should be silent on that issue. Unless you're going to be part of the solution, you can't take away someone else's choices to make a solution that is best for them. So I feel that if society wants to get rid of a woman's right to an abortion, then they need to come up with solutions to allow women to not carry the burden of having a child that they don't want. It isn't something that we should stand by and pass judgment on unless we're willing to step in and take over. You know, back in the day, there used to be a saying, my mom was uh, growing up, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, these days, the village is not there. I mean, the economy is really bad now. So imagine how many women are already struggling to live, in a world where inflation is over 8%. And now we're telling them, in all of these states that have decided to immediately ban abortion, now we're telling them, well, you don't have the right to not have your child in this state. So what? That gas is over $5 a gallon, and it costs you twice as much now to buy a home or pay for food than it did a year and a half ago. So what? You still need to have this child. And then, consider the resources of, yes, there is welfare, and there is, all of these resources, if that's what you choose to call them, for women who have children. I don't have high opinion of those things. I don't think that the solution to the life, or pro-life, pro-choice debate is, okay, if you can't take care of your child, we'll throw money at you, because money is not the only thing that is required to raise a child. You can give a person money, but one, unless you're gonna be around to make sure that that money and resources that you are giving them is being used in the proper manner, you're doing very little for that person or their child. And two, money doesn't create an emotional bond. So it is very important for a child to be raised in a loving and caring household. And when a person has a child, when they're not ready, that may not be what their child experiences. And unfortunately, a lot of times, especially in the Black communities, there is a lot of mental health issues. There is a lot of neglect and emotional abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, all of these things happening in communities because parents are struggling. They are dealing with their own issues, and a lot of times they have more children than they can financially or emotionally handle. So these issues need to be considered when we talk about women's rights. Like I said, yes, I am an ex-Jehovah's Witness, but I no longer hold the views that I had when I was a Jehovah's Witness. I now take things and assess them from not only a standpoint of what are my own values, but what really is the issue and how does this issue affect me? And if it doesn't affect me, then I have to figure out whether or not it's something that I should be imposing upon someone else, or how do I want to navigate this issue if it did affect me, or if it were to affect my children. And one of the things that I have always thought, since I wasn't being a Jehovah's Witness, is that if my teenage daughter gets pregnant, there is no way that I would force her to have that child, because I understand the importance of education. I understand the importance of independence, and I understand how difficult it is to be a young unwed mother. Okay. My mother began having children when she was, uh, I believe, right around the age of, uh, maybe I want to say 16. I know many uh, young black mothers who have had children prior to their 18th birthday or very close to it. And those children have not always had the best upbringing. Okay, so it is not okay to force a child to raise a child. And taking over the responsibility of raising your child's child is not always the best thing either. So I would 100% consider, after becoming a mother to a daughter, I realized that that's not something I would force on my daughter. So if, she were to make that mistake, and I do instill in my children um, not to have sex before they're married. I would hope that that is the way they live their lives, but I can't regulate that. But I'm definitely not going to ban them to a lifetime of trying to emotionally and financially take care of a child that they're not ready to take care of because they may have made a mistake. I think that if a teenage girl does get pregnant and she doesn't want to bear that child, I think that there's a lesson in there that you can take and sit down with your child, because sometimes I think for them it's scary. And all of maybe the reckless behavior they may have had going on might be able to be prevented in the future if they can get out of that one mistake, and then understand the consequences of their behaviors might lead to that again, and start to make different choices. And I mean, we can, people can have debates about, well, they're just going to keep doing it. I'm not sitting here trying to judge what a person will or will not do, but I do know that in order to protect those people who may have made a one-off mistake, we shouldn't make definitive laws that prevent a person from recovering from that mistake or from permanently affecting their lives because of what may be a mistake. So that is my opinion on the matter. And as I stated, I'm very open to comments or anyone else's opinion. I just ask that there be a level of respect in the dialogue. Thanks. Until next time.